I'm really
Hello and welcome to the big show with myself, Pete Selby, alongside Johnny Towers and Sam Cook. Now, over here in the UK, it is about 7:20. We're a little bit late. Sam, what time is it over there, and where are you? Just to remind viewers and listeners.
I'm in beautiful British Columbia in the west coast of Canada. It is 11:30 in the morning on a Monday. I'm skiving off work and I've blocked out my calendar so I can record For Fox's Sake Big Show.
Absolutely fantastic. Jono, I'm pretty sure there's not a time difference between myself and you.
No, it's getting dark here. Market Harborough, that's where I am.
Well, I'm in what was sunny Shepshed, and welcome to the big show. Welcome to everyone watching live, whether you're watching on X, on YouTube, or on Facebook, whether you're listening to the podcast, For Fox's Sake, and the big show with myself, Pete Selby, on Apple or even on Spotify. Get in contact if you are watching live. Get in contact. Just reply on X or on Facebook or on obviously on YouTube as well with the comments as to what we're talking about. And we talk about Leicester's lack of cutting edge at the weekend in their 0-0 draw against Coventry. One thing that you do need to do, though, you all need to do this, and it's going to become very, very important, is you do need to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube. Click on For Fox's Sake. You'll find us on there. If you're watching already, then you know where it is. Make sure you click on subscribe. First of all, you're not going to miss a show. You're not going to miss a big show. You're not going to miss the preview with Rob Hayes, talking all things the next game with Leicester a couple of days before the game. Our champion show, talking about this time 10 years ago. We've already had August and September. Listen back to that. And then also the FPL show with myself and Matt Elliott, talking all things FPL. You'll never miss a show. But if you subscribe, you'll be automatically entered into our fantastic competition, which we will be launching soon. Soon, we will be launching exactly when I get the prize in my hands, because I don't want to launch a competition first without having the prize in my hands. But you will need to be a subscriber to our YouTube channel. It's free. It's completely free, but you'll need to be a subscriber to enter. How about that? So there you go. Make sure you do subscribe. Anyway, we're talking all things Leicester on the big show. There is no topic that's off the table on the big show. We can talk about anything we like, but we're going to talk about the 0-0 draw against Coventry and a perceived maybe lack of cutting edge, Jono, with Leicester. Or is it? Is it a case of we've brought these players in the transfer window and naturally they're going to be embedded into the team as we go through the next couple of games, and that's what we've seen. We've brought players back in from the cold, which I think we all might agree with as well. Obviously, Aaron Ramsey out with the red card is a big problem as well with that player just in behind the front pair. Problems maybe on the wing with the cutting edge with Mavididi in that one chance. And then we're yet to bring Carranza in the side. So one question is, do we have a lack of cutting edge? But the other question is, actually, is it just it's a 0-0 draw against a pretty decent opposition in the Championship?
Well, first of all, I was really disappointed. I was there at the game and I was taking my my little one over. Talking of little ones, they're coming in, unfortunately.
That's all right. Get them involved.
Yeah. So, me and Daniel went down to the King Power and I was really looking forward to it. You know, it was my first M69 derby. I was really up for and optimistic for a good, solid victory, actually. But unfortunately, it didn't transpire to be that way. Dull 0-0, and we left pretty despondent and very disappointed. Lack of cutting edge is most definitely what you describe it as being. Also, and I've alluded to that in my little title there, stop faffing around. The amount of times in the first half that, excuse me about it.
No, that's fine. This is proof it's live.
Yeah. So this is, here he is, Alex. He's my
do you think Leicester have got a lack of cutting edge, Alex? This is what I want to know. Do you think Leicester should have scored?
Come on, he's asking you a question, Alex. What
do you think Leicester should have scored, Alex, instead of looking at yourself in the
Leicester to win?
Yes, he did.
I wanted it. I wanted it 1-2.
You wanted it
1-2?
Come on, I'm going to ship him out.
I tell you what, Jono. There's some parenting issues going on here. If you wanted 1-2, I don't know. Well, okay, we'll move on to you.
The door. Apologies for that.
This is great.
Yeah, so me and Daniel were at the King Power, and we left pretty despondent and very disappointed. Daniel always wants to see goals, so he was a bit fed up and a bit bored by the end, to be honest. And that first half, I was talking about faffing around. Oh my goodness me, the amount of slow kind of, the tippy tappy stuff. I'm just sick and tired of seeing it. It's just like there were so many times as well where there was a through ball that I could see, play the guy through. It was mainly Bubu Samaria, I think, is the main culprit. He just slows everything up. He gets the ball, and there's what I could see as an easy through ball. Send IU through, or one of the wings sent the winger off, and he would just keep hold of the ball and then lay it square to Winks or something. I was like, and there was so many people around me going, "Oh, stop faffing around." The lack of speed and urgency in the first half, it was just very, very frustrating. Second half was better, but even so, yeah, we had some chances to win it. But yeah, Mavididi, again, lack of finishing. I think I'd like to talk about Mavididi actually at some point during the show, because I think we haven't seen anything of him this season, and I think we've assumed that he's going back in the team based on reputation of what he's done previously. And this season, we've seen nothing from him as far as I'm concerned. And I think I'm wondering whether it's time to start talking about whether he needs some time out and being replaced.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely come on to Mavididi, because I mean, he's a player who I think's been disappointing for all of last year, really very disappointing. But and of course this year as well. Sam, your thoughts on the game as well, and Leicester's perceived lack of cutting edge, or is it just again in that one game? And you're going to get these games, and Leicester fans, which we all are. And of course, when you do podcasts, etc., and you're talking about this amongst your mates down the pub, etc., we can maybe overreact. Or is it something that we've seen already in the team? Is there one or two players that you look at maybe with Samara midfield and go, hang on, there are glaring problems in this side with the cutting edge? Okay, they're there for a certain reason, and certain players need to be changed around.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can be moderately positive. Coventry score a lot of goals. They've got 15 already this season. I think they've scored 5 and a number of goals. And we have been already this season caught out with slow starts. You look at Oxford, 1-0 up after 9 minutes. Wednesday we got caught out, and I think there's a couple of other examples. And we didn't this time against a team that scores a lot of goals, and we started slowly, and they didn't score, and they didn't score in 90 minutes. I think there's some positives for that. Yeah, we should have. I mean, Mavididi's chance, my goodness, probably created enough chances to have a better attempt, better chance of scoring than them, maybe. But I think a draw is pretty fair. I think they'll be happier, coming away from home against a big club just coming down. They'll be happier with the 0-0. But I wasn't disappointed. Watching the game at the end, I thought, yeah, 0-0, that's about right. That feels fair. We didn't get robbed. They didn't get robbed. Move on.
Yeah, I very much felt that at the end of the game as well. We'll take the point and move on. Could have been worse, could have lost the game, and we did create a number of chances. We'll just talk about the starting lineup, because there were a few changes. Skip was put to one side and Winks brought in. Coley put to one side on the bench with then Walt Vass coming into the side, and then also James replacing Ramsey. Now, I think all three decisions to be honest, I'm completely fine with all the decisions that's been made so far in terms of substitution as well, in terms of the formation and the way that they've brought in the new players steadily, even though it's only been a couple of games. And then we'll come on to what we might do in the future with the forwards, especially. So I think it was just a sensible option, and almost you can see that Winks and Walt Vass, both players, heavily linked with moves away, not necessarily with individual clubs being interested. There was one or two names, but in terms of them maybe being unsettled at Leicester, we saw the reaction from Walt Vass when he scored at home. And then we've not really seen Winks, but we've seen him come on and not really look happy, maybe at the end of the game when the final whistle's gone. But I think most people will look at these two players and go, and this is what I think that they are the best two players in their positions in the football club, certainly. With Winks, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get a player who can receive the ball from the defence, pass the ball sideways, pass the ball backwards, keep the ball, but also, more importantly, start moves, get forward as well, but really pass the ball forward incisively, quickly. The best passer in the football club by an awful long way. And then you've got Walt Vass at the back. We've seen him alongside Vestergaard in the Championship winning season. We know what we get. We get a bit of pace as well, which is obviously severely lacking with Vestergaard. And Walt Vass on his day in the Championship is one of the best defenders in the league. Really, really is. So I completely agree with that. And the rest of the side really kind of fell into place. James playing in a position that we might not see him playing in once Aaron Ramsey is not sent off. And I think it's quite obvious to see that maybe James will be alongside Winks, possibly in midfield, to replace Samari. That's, I think, what most people would look at, and then have Ramsey in front. And then we'll come on to the forward line at the end. But with the actual lineup itself, Johnny, did you have a problem with the lineup, or were you actually quite pleased with the lineup against Coventry? And actually, we'll throw into the conversation as well, what would you then do now moving on? Now that we've seen James start a game, now that we've got Walt Vass and Winks back, would you keep them in the side? And then, of course, with the forward line, why not throw it in? What would you do in that forward position?
Yeah, I think you're right what you're saying about Winks and Fass. As much as we don't want to admit it, Walt Fass at this level is probably a decent option. I think probably a step ahead of where Okoli is right now from what we've seen of Okoli so far. He didn't really put a foot wrong, really, Fass, on Saturday, but he didn't do anything. He wasn't tearing up trees either. He was just putting a reasonably good, professional display. I think Winks made a huge difference in midfield compared with Skip and Samari. I think, I liked what I saw of JJ as well. Quite a dynamic midfielder, likes to drive with the ball. Reminded me a bit of Dewsbury Hall in a way, that kind of molded player where he likes to get the ball and when we're on with it, he's got a shot on him as well. We were watching him warming up, and he was putting them all in the top corner. He's got, as he showed in the first half, actually, with that amazing save from the Coventry keeper, he got it on target and he pushed it around the post. So I think he's got a goal in him as well. So I think that's probably where it'll end up in the longer term. Is him and Winks will be the sort of the linchpins in midfield. Maybe with Ramsey or someone else ahead. I'd like to see Ayew maybe play in that sort of dropped back striker role, potentially with Carranza up front. What we saw of Carranza, didn't see much, about 10-15 minutes, but what we did see is he looked neat and tidy. He didn't do anything special, but he didn't really have time or opportunity to be honest. But I think I'd like to see Carranza probably get a start at some point with maybe Ayew in behind, or when Ramsey's back, maybe with him in the side. So I think things are starting to fall into place, as we were expecting them to. Probably after about 10 games, we'd start seeing a sort of settled side. So as we go forward, you were asking me what I'd like to see. Carranza probably to have a start and give him a bit of a run up front. Ayew's done pretty well for us so far. I think we're all moaning and groaning about Ayew, weren't we, at the start of the season? But actually, he's done really well, and his attitude's been really spot on as far as I'm concerned. He's done the job that he's needed to do, but he's not a striker, and so we can't rely on him to be scoring goals left, right, and centre every week. I think he'll chip in, but I think he's better as a sort of removed striker, or that number 10 potentially behind the striker. So that's what I'd like to see, and probably I'd like to see Mavididi have a bit of a break. I know Dakota Reed's back now. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Reed, but I think at this level he's probably got something to offer. So I'd probably bring him in for a little bit and give Mavididi a bit of a rest or a break or whatever he needs to get his form back on track. Or even maybe a Munga, he's come on and looked okay. He obviously scored a goal the other week as well. So maybe it's time for Munga to get a couple of games. So that would be what I'd do. I think Ricardo back in as well is a big positive. I think talking about best defenders or best players in the Championship, I think probably Ricardo would be up there in that conversation as well. I think he's a Rolls Royce at this level. So
I think just a word on the lineup. If I were Marty before the game, that's the lineup I would have picked exactly. With one exception, you used the word sensible before, Pete, and I think Marty's gone the sensible thing. I would have Chowdhury in for Samari, given the lineup, given the players that we've got available. I think it's sensible that he didn't, because Ricky's not got a full 90 in him, and who else is going to come on at right back? It's not going to be Christensen, and if it's not him, we've got absolutely no one else. So it's got to be Hamza. So starting Hamza in midfield and then moving him to right back's probably a bit disruptive. So I get why he didn't. I'm again, I'm done with Samari. I don't want to see him start. I'm looking forward to Ramsey being back, so new JJ can slot in there. We need another option. He's just so ponderous. He just sort of jogs around the field, gets the ball, passes it sideways or backwards, jogs around a bit more. And I think especially against Coventry, the derby, you want Hamza in there causing trouble. You want him, maybe snapping someone's ankle in half in the first 10 minutes to get the crowd going.
Yeah.
And we really missed that.
It didn't feel like that on Saturday. After about 20 minutes, it felt very flat. Which surprised me a little bit for the type of game I was expecting. But yeah.
It's I think it's interesting. I mean, funny enough, I wrote Decade Over Read actually down in my notes here, just purely because I think a lot of people will look at Mavididi and go, bring Joey Monger on, put him from the start. When I can completely understand why they aren't at the moment, because of his age, etc., and because of what he can do off the bench as well for a final half an hour. I think it's a perfect player to have at this current time. The only thing I would say with the starting lineup with Leicester at the moment, first of all, the next game I can completely see why Ayew would more than likely be the centre forward, because it's going to be a tricky away game, and I can see him being the option. But Carranza, actually, I was really actually impressed with him. I thought his movement looked good. He managed to pull off a few defenders, but reversing and essentially mistiming his run on purpose. So, you kind of dummy to go forward, defender goes forward, if he actually stays where he is, and then all of a sudden he's got half a yard or 2 yards. And then also trying to just find a bit of space naturally in the penalty area, making a few runs between defenders. He had that one header. And yeah, for a little cameo, I was actually quite impressed. Mm-hmm. Of course, we don't know whether he's going to sink or swim. I'd like to see him play more. And I think he naturally will. And I think especially at home at the starts of his Leicester's career. But the one option I look at this, and I look at it at the start of the show, we've called the show Leicester's lack of cutting edge. And a lot of people look at Mavididi because of the issue on Saturday, not just the missed chance, but also the slightly below par performance. And of course, you're matching him to what's happening on the other side with Fatawu. And I think a lot of people look at Mavididi, and I think there is a problem. Again, I think the problem started at the start of last season. I think he's been poor for a season and however many games we've played now. And I think he probably does need a little bit of time on the bench at some point. On the other hand, you could easily say, start, get your form in the first team. We're playing all right. We're in the playoff positions. Everything's kind of okay at Leicester. But I think you've answered the question, actually, regarding how I would perceive the lack of cutting edge and how I would change it. And I think it is with Samari and James. Now, of course, James is playing in the position where Ramsey would play. So if you put Ramsey in number 10, James alongside Winks, you automatically get that little bit of physical presence, the player who can go and what we expected Samari to be, and he's still not done it, and he never will. I'm getting the T-shirt made. That player who can go box to box, and he is that, James. And of course, he can pass the ball forward and he can shoot, as Jono said. So I think him creating chances, passing the ball quickly forward to the wingers, which we have done this season. I've been really impressed with the way Leicester have actually got the ball to Fatawu and Mavididi really quickly. But I think it can be quicker, and also it can be given in a better position. And the way it can be given in a better position is the person who passes the ball to him is in a better position in the first place. Winks will always be slightly deep, not a problem. But what you need is then the guy alongside him. If he can get forward and then deliver a ball out wide from a more forward position, there you go. He gets the ball. Defenders not really got a chance to get in place, and they can either take the player on, make a forward pass, or even take him on and shoot, etc. And it just creates a better goal scoring opportunity. So I think James is the actual key. Problem is, he's playing in the position where he's not going to be playing for Leicester. So what do? Do you move James back? Do you maybe play Carranza as a number 9 and then put Ayew back in the 10 position? That could easily happen, something that, Jono, you've mentioned. And it'd be interesting to see what happens with the next game. But I'm actually really encouraged. I thought it was a very solid display. Very happy that Walt Vass is back in the centre-half position. Very happy, because he is, alongside Vestergaard, they're the best 2 defenders. And Okoli, I don't know the guy. I've never met the guy. I don't know whether any of us have met the guy. No? Anyone watching? No. But I'm quite sure that he would look at those 2 centre-halves and go, okay, I can fully understand why they are the best, why they are the current centre-halves at the football club. And I don't think he's going to be too miserable on the bench at the moment. But then if you got a Walt Vass maybe sulking on the bench or a Vestergaard, I can maybe see that being a bit of a problem. So I don't know. That just is a little bit of a vibe I get. So we then look at Mavididi. Just one thing with him, Sam. Like, what would you do with him for the next game? Would you actually drop him for maybe a Decordova Reed if he's fit, or even you could drop him for a Decordova Reed and say to him, look, you've got an hour on the pitch, and then we're going to bring Monga on. So you've only got an hour on the field. That's fine because you maybe only have an hour in your legs. Or would you keep him in the side? Like, what's your gut instinct with Mavididi? Has the poor form gone on too long, or is it time for a change and maybe for him to sit on the bench and also possibly come on off the bench in maybe that number 10 position if the game is required for him to come on?
I think looking at Mavididi and the last couple of games, I've seen bursts of activity from him. You know, he does well, like you were saying, Pete, getting the ball in a good area and then bursting forward. He can take on a man, his fullback, really well, actually. I think that part of his game is still there. It's the end product, you know. It's just he'll make this great run and then he'll have a really weak shot at the goalkeeper from a narrow angle when he should have squared it, or he'll have a weak shot from the top of the box that the keeper easily picks up. That I don't know how you can fix that. I don't know if he's going to play through that and get back into form, if he just needs to be on the training field just shooting drills. But I think that creating chances part of his game is still there. And whether that's, you know, valuable enough to say, okay, let's have that for 60 minutes and maybe, you know, we'll get a deflection and somebody can score off that, great. Or it gives the fullback something to think about, and then Jeremy Monga or maybe a Bobby Decordova Reed can come on with 30 minutes to go when the fullback's absolutely gassed because he's been chasing Mavididi up and down the wing all day. Not expecting him to score, but just setting up so that somebody can come on and score. I think that's still valuable. I wouldn't necessarily drop him. I don't think Bobby coming back from injury is going to have too many minutes in him. I can see him getting eased into the team, whether that's at the expense of Monga, I don't know. A word on Jeremy Monga. I watched the Coventry match with a friend of mine who was visiting from out of town. He's a Blackburn fan. And we watched that match together. And when Monga came on, I said to me, I watched this kid. He is absolutely just something special. And as I said that, Monga drops his shoulder and then turns his fullback inside out and displaces his kidneys and then puts the ball through his legs and he's on. And the guy's sprawling on the floor with vertigo thinking, what's just happened? And my mate goes, oh, okay. I said, yeah, enjoy him while we got him because we'll have him for 2 years. And then on his 18th birthday, he is gone for better things. He is just so special. But, you know, you wouldn't put him in for 90 minutes or maybe even you wouldn't put him in for 60, 70 minutes. I don't think you can put Bobby in for that long either. So who else have we got? I think it has to be Mavididi. But you have to then expect, okay, he's not going to score at this moment, you know, whether it's confidence, whether it's he needs more time on the training ground. The goals have got to come from somewhere else. So you factor that in. And you just say, just go, run your man ragged for 60 minutes and then come off. And we'll work on the shooting drills in the meantime.
Is it a case, Jono, that with Monga and a few people don't like me answering my own question before I ask it, but I'm going to do it again. Is it a case that would you, if you were to play him, and we've seen him start away from home, that didn't go too well. Is it a case that if you were to start him, you would only do that in a home game at this current time?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Apologies.
That's all right. That's all right. I'll ask Alex. I'll say like, basically, if you're going to start Monga from the starts, would it only be at home? For me, I would say that. So, like for example, we've got Wrexham coming up at home in a couple of games' time. That for me, if there is still an issue with Mavididi, etc., and we think actually Monga, we're going to start him from the start. I think a home game, I'd rather see him start at home at the current time than start away from home. Like I wouldn't start him away at the Hawthorns on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I can. Yeah, the next game against West Brom is quite a big game, isn't it? And so I don't think it's one that I'd throw Monga into, but I definitely think Monga will have to feature or will feature. So just to answer the question you asked before, I think maybe we wouldn't drop Mavididi for this one because, you know, regardless of the lack of form that I can see, he's still a safe pair of hands, and I think defensively he's probably better as well. So I would still probably keep my faith with Mavididi for this one against West Brom, and then look for opportunities to draft others in the next few games.
The one thing with the league as well, no one's really running away with the league, are they? Are they, Sam? Because, and I had the league right in front of me. Yeah, Middlesbrough top 16 points, fine. And then we are essentially level with Bristol City in third. We're in fourth, 11, and then you go all the way down to ninth place. QPR have turned it around there, only a point below us. So no one's really running away with the league at the moment. And also, if you're looking at the two opposition. The two relegated sides from the Premier League, who everyone thought was going to be right up there. Ipswich slightly misfiring. Fingers crossed they don't get to replay their 1-0, hopefully, defeat away at Blackburn with your mate side. And also Southampton, who they're looking a little bit desperate at the moment. We all know I commentate for Southampton. And they were poor against Hull. They really were. The one thing with Hull is they've got that centre forward where you can base all your attacks off. So they've got McBurney up front, who, he's okay as a centre forward in the Championship, but what he is, he's a big lad, and you can then base all your more creative players off him. And during the game, I was like, hang on, that's something, first of all, Southampton absolutely crying out for, but also I was looking at it going, I'd love that at Leicester, someone in that ilk where you could then have the likes of, as we know, Monga, etc., or Mavididi, and also Fatawu basing their attacks off the guy up front who can hold the ball up, flick the ball on, and then lay it off for them, whatever the case is. It looked really, really good. But for this game against West Brom and again against Wrexham coming up, how would you look at those two games? I'll hand it over before answering my own question. Just looking now, again, what would you do with the wing situation and maybe midfield?
I'd keep more or less the same side that played against Coventry. I think, especially, it's going to be a tough game away from home against a good team. That's where you want your experienced players in there. I wouldn't mess too much. I think, looking what Marty was saying after the game, I think he was pretty happy with the performance. Obviously not the result. 0-0 is not amazing, but he said we're making progress to what we want to do. So I would expect that he'll be pretty consistent with that. I would make big changes for Wrexham. I think that's a golden opportunity at home against a pretty weak team. I mean, Jeremy Monga running at Connor Cody, yes, please. And shooting at Danny Ward, by the way, yeah, I'll have that. That's, if we can get 4 points, a draw at West Brom and then a win at home, I think that's pretty good business.
Yeah, I think so as well. And also with that midfield, as much as I said, James alongside Winks, and then obviously you got a number 10, which could be a Mavididi possibly. If that's the way they want to go, or maybe a Decordova-Reid in that position, they could easily swap round. Those two could easily play a number 10 and a number 11. That could easily work, and they could interchange. That could easily be something that's looked into. But for that game, I can easily see Samari playing in midfield because it's away from home. One of the toughest away games that we'll have away at West Brom. So I can see them not really changing that. Again, anchoring midfield with Samari. So I think if there were a change, it would be further forward. I wouldn't be against Carranza coming into that game at all, because I just think that we need that number 9. We need that person who's going to score 15 plus goals, because you don't really get promoted without that. And at the moment, we don't have that. As much as Fatawu is on course for double figures plus this season, as much as we're hoping Ramsey will get going once he's actually stays on the field, goals will come from midfielder James with his shooting masterclass that Jono said, and also hopefully from Mavididi out wide. We know that Ayew is going to chip in, but we still are lacking that 15 to 20 goal centre forward. Now, I still think with what we did in the transfer window, we will have funds in January, because obviously we didn't use any at all. And if we're in a position, let's just say we're in exactly the same position we're in now. Okay, we're in 4th in the league. It's very close with the top 6, 7, and it's really up for grabs in the automatic places. And maybe we're getting a little bit of good news muted regarding any points deductions. I can see Leicester then making maybe waves in that January transfer window to then bring in maybe a centre forward if we don't have the goals fine from Carranza, and we'll see what happens then. But I agree. I think maybe Carranza could easily start against Wrexham, obviously injuries dependent. Also, a little bit of news this week with Thomas signing a new contract. Did that surprise you, Jono? I must admit, I was rather surprised with the amounts on it, with the length of new contract for a player who let's be honest, is playing no fine at the moment. He's playing absolutely fine in the Championship. And towards the back end of last season, probably the last 6 or 7 games or so, he was, I would say, our best player. I think he really was. But rewarding a player, and I know it's a new manager, etc., but rewarding a player who's played well at the start of this season and a handful of games last season, and then you go back through his Leicester career, which is fairly checkered, yes, very good at the start and medals, etc. But since then, is it a player that maybe should be given such a length of contract, or am I just being really harsh about a homegrown player who's been given a long contract and won't be a single problem and is not going to break any wage limits that we've got?
Yeah, probably that. I mean, actually, I hadn't seen the length of contract in the news, actually. How long is the contract he's been given?
Is it 2029?
2029, yeah, 4-year contract.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fairly standard these days, isn't it? And I think he is one of those that if we go up, he'll probably become a second choice left back if we were a Premier League side. I don't know whether he's proved over the years that he's at that level, but that's not to say that he couldn't develop into a solid left back, at Premier League level either. I think he's probably a decent lad to have around, and he's grown up as a Leicester fan. So having those sort of players in and around the squad isn't a bad thing in the longer term. We've got, the likes of Chowdhury and, and previous to that, others that have, I was thinking about KDH, people like that just know the club, and, having a few of those around, I don't think is a bad thing. Is he ever going to pull up trees? Probably not. He's probably just going to have a good, solid career, isn't he? To me, he's sort of in the middle of being a Championship / Premier League player for me. He's not quite got the levels of the Premier League, but he's very, very good at this level. So maybe that is his level. Maybe he's reflecting where we are as a club in terms of where we are, in terms of being maybe very good at this level, but not quite good enough for the Premier League. So I haven't got a problem with him signing a contract for 4 years. No, not at all.
I think the one thing you could argue about the length of contract is Leicester are protecting an asset who would be an asset if he does fall out of favour. Fingers crossed, if that happens, it will be because we're promoted and we're signing some good players, and it's just naturally he's not going to play. So when he moves on, it will be for a few quid because the length of contract. So I can understand it from that point of view. I think for me, Thomas, he's one of those players where you get players who all of a sudden come into the first team squad from the youth setup, and maybe they have a good year or so, they show good flashes. And I think it matters an awful lot of what team they're in. If you go back to the late 90s, for example, and every player is different. So this isn't the absolute rule, but it's just something I've always thought of since watching Leicester from the very early 90s. When you've got a good side and a young player comes into that side, they can look a better player than they actually are because they're in a good side. And if you go back to Thomas's start of the career, he was surrounded by very good players. You look at, he played in the and was vital in the FA Cup final win. You go back to the late 90s, and a whole host of players who were part of the Leicester squad, not just for half a season, but for season upon season. And then as soon as Leicester went a bit skew with in the very early 2000s, they did not just drop off at Leicester. Their careers really did just fall down the football pyramid, and that can happen. And I think Thomas is one of those players. And I think just his size was one thing. When you're surrounded by good players, he's a good footballer, good technical player. But all of a sudden, when you need to be a little bit bulkier, a little bit stronger, you're going to be defending more. You're not having as much possession. You're not surrounded by the players that we had. All of a sudden, you need to be a little bit more physical, and didn't have it. He got caught out, and then the confidence, which of course was always sky high because his football career has just gone one way, all the way to the top and an FA Cup medal. All of a sudden, that confidence, we found out, cracked, and he lost all confidence in the world. And he essentially, and it sounds terrible, but if you listen back to For Fox's Sake, he lost the ability to kick a football straight, and he really did. He got to that point. So I quite like him as a player because he's gone from that rock bottom to now being given a 4-year contract at the football club. And I just kind of go, well, fair play to you, mate. Fair play. And I know there was a few snarky comments about it, and I must admit I turned my nose up when I saw it. But overall, I think actually we're just protecting our own asset, one of our own, as they say, is not a bad thing, Sam. But you get those, and also with Leicester at the moment, I don't mind them giving those length of contracts to those sort of players, because we're all these players coming through. I think Page signed a contract today. It is just very exciting with these whole crop of youngsters coming through, and also with what's going on in the under-21s at the moment. Players who have not got to the first team squad yet, players that we've never heard of, most of us who don't maybe follow the youth team setup as closely as others. All of a sudden, there's rumours of a genuine handful of players and going, yeah, you've seen Page, you've seen Monger, etc., who's maybe obviously the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot there who are just as good, and they're going to possibly and hopefully progress in the next year or two to the first team squad.
Yeah, it's brilliant to see. And as fans, we love to see it. And I think there's so much more credit that you're going to give to a player that's come through academy, so much more goodwill. If they have a decent game and they come through the academy, then you watch them and go, wow, they've had an amazing game because they're one of ours. You just give them that extra little credit in the bank, and it's wonderful. I'll give you a hot take.
Yes.
I really like this contract for Luke Thomas. I think it lets us sell him on our terms. It keeps a player around who obviously wants to be there, and talks about fast and winks, and obviously in the summer we lost players that didn't want to be here, and some bad eggs in the squad, and you got to protect the good eggs in the squad, especially ones that come through the academy. Here's my hot take: I think Luke Thomas has been our best player this season. I think he has been completely consistent. I can't think of a single error he's made. He's done exactly what he's been asked of in that left back position. I think he has been our best player. Maybe Fatau, but Luke Thomas has done absolutely nothing, not a foot wrong in any game so far.
Yeah.
Go on then, Jono. I'm going to throw a different name out, actually. Go on then, Jono. Who's the best player so far? And I'm going to just maybe slightly say one thing. I'm going to say maybe for when that player has played. So it doesn't have to be a player who's played every single game, but when they've been on the field of play, which kind of maybe gives away who I think. Go on, Jono.
Well, as I said earlier, I think Ayu's been very, very good for us. I think from the very first game where I saw him up front, and then actually in the second half against Sheffield Wednesday, I thought, wow, he really is trying his heart out here. And so for effort and application and attitude, I think Ayew is exactly what we're looking for this season. I think he's shown exactly his mettle this season, which I'm happy to say I'm surprised about, frankly. So I'd go with Ayew if you're asking me off the top of my head. But Luke Thomas is a good shout. He hasn't really done us anything wrong. Saying that, he hasn't done anything dynamically amazing either, but maybe that's not his job. Maybe it's his job to, protect the line and let the likes of Mavididi and Fatau do the business. So yeah, I'm with that. He's a consistent performer, certainly at this level.
Well, in this awards section of the show for Player of the Year at this early stage, I mean, looking at what's the date? The 22nd of September. What are we doing Player of the Year for? But anyway, that's the big show. We can do what we want. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Ricardo Pereira. Actually, I'm gonna think because for when he's been on the field of play, he's been exceptional. Now I know we're talking about probably the best player at the club in theory. Obviously, Fatau will maybe get to that stage but with what he's done in his career, yes, of course he's going to be good. But I think overall he's been brilliant, and also I think the bookmakers are slightly missing him out on his goals as well. So do keep an eye on those markets if you want to do that sort of thing. So final thoughts on Leicester or anything else. There's a couple of things I want to mention. First of all, Joe Healy, who we all know obviously on the show, was picked out by the cameras in his nice pink shirts. It was a shame he didn't wear pink shorts and socks. Or was he going to wear those? Or was he going to wear the all? Was he going to go all pink, like full pink? I think was it.
I was egging him on to do it, but I don't think I convinced him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to catch up with Joe the game. We were planning to have a pint together, but due to timings, it just didn't work out. But good on him for getting on telly.
Well, it's not for everyone. I think it was proven actually with seeing Joe in his pink shirt. I think it was a little bit too much at an early hour as well. People having their lunch. You don't want to see him having lunch. And finally, and something that happened a few weeks ago. I haven't mentioned it so far on the podcast and that, but last week it was the funeral of Bradley Varnum, the stadium announcer at Leicester. Someone we all know, with maybe never even meeting the guy, because he's been the soundtrack to Leicester for years and years and years, since Filbert Street, actually. And I know Brad. I've met Brad many a time whilst being a commentator at Leicester for a decade. And he was just a really nice bloke. Like, really, he was exactly what you imagined he would be. I've always been telling people in the last few weeks and that. And he was just such a nice guy. In and around like the press area downstairs, where everyone's like having a bit of food before the game, going around the tables. Obviously, when I was down there, I tended to, because I think it was the time I turned up, there was not many seats left on those tables, and normally you see like big Matt Elliott trying to find an empty seat, and Jerry Taggart's just moving a seat out the way so he doesn't sit next to him, and all sorts of shenanigans going on. The Radio Leicester people on one, people who have met each other over the years, some of the old hacks, if it's a big game as well, they're all sitting together. But I ended up mostly on the table with the opposition, either in-house commentary team, or maybe it was their local radio, depending on what area of the country it was. And that was quite nice to hear stories about their side, etc. But also Brad was doing something which I always do, and that's ask him how you pronounce that certain player's name. How do you pronounce your new centre forward or your winger, or what's going to be the lineup, etc. So that's how I kind of got to know him, to say hello to, because it's the same face you see you see all the time. And then not that long ago, you're going back maybe a few years now, I started another job alongside what I do in terms of football commentary in greyhound racing and horse racing, etc. And I walked into the studios on the first day, and Brad was stood there. I had no idea he was going to be there. No idea. And he's like, "All right, Pete, God, we need a centre forward, don't we? What about the wing? What about this?" And just started about Leicester. Like, he just never stops. And everyone's looking around at me, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm the new guy. Where's the studio? What do I do? Where's the toilets?" And like Brad's there just talking about Leicester, like blah, 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 like he's on a podcast. And it was just like, I never knew he worked there. And I was like, "Oh, you must know this guy." And I was like, yeah, I know Brad from Leicester and all that. Oh, okay. And he was so helpful, like really, really helpful again. And yeah, obviously very, very sad. He wasn't well for I don't know how long, but all of a sudden he went off WhatsApp groups, etc. And then obviously in a few months' time, it's the news came out, and yeah, really sad. I think the football club did it very well with the previous home game by having Brad on the screen, because everyone knew by then, and they've got the blue plaque now by the tunnel. So on the tunnel where you walk out, where the teams walk out, on the right where the Leicester City dugout is, just at the end of the tunnel, right by the dugouts, there's the blue plaque, and it says Bradley Varnum, and then it also says, and now your Leicester City side, because of course that was his thing, that was his shtick, his line that everyone knows. And when I did my first stadium announce gig, and I love stadium announcing, I love it, I think it's so good. And one of my career highlights was when I was given a registration number to read out. I was like, yes, I've done it. It was on TV as well. I was like, fantastic. Can someone move their car, please? I was like, yes. And it was like that. I've done it. But when I did it, I did, and now you're, and it was Arsenal, and now you're Arsenal. And I did it, and I was like, it was just because I've listened to Brad for all those years, and I just naturally did that. And a couple of people, I think it was the second game I did it, they came over and said, "Oh, that sounds really good." And I was like, "Yeah, it's just something that I thought of, and all that." But it wasn't, of course. It was Brad. But yeah, his funeral was, I think it was last week. I think it was very private, etc., with the family and that. But yeah, ultimately, really, really sad. But what a great bloke! Like, really, really nice guy. And you see all the stories about people and that, and obviously people are going to be very nice. But I can assure you, from someone who half knew him, let's get it right. I didn't know him that well, but when I bumped into him away from Leicester at that different job, completely different, nothing to do with football, down in central London, and all of a sudden, blah, 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 all Leicester, and everyone's rolling their eyes, going, "Oh my God, we've got it! He's on again about Leicester and that." So yeah, but what a nice guy, and good luck to whoever's doing it now. Okay, I don't know who that is at the moment, but yeah, fair play, because they are big shoes to fill. My word, they really are. But yeah, so that's that. Anything else to do with this week? Because we will have the preview, so we don't want to preview too much. The preview every week with Rob Hayes, a more sensible host. He will be talking all things West Bromwich Albion versus Leicester, and it's on Friday. That's the game, so the preview will be out. I'd imagine Rob will want to do it on Wednesday or Thursday. But your final thoughts, lads, on the big show?
Yeah, it was a nice tribute there to Pete. Pete. I didn't know the guy at all, but it's nice to hear your stories on him. Yeah, and I think he will be sadly missed. And I think also, the club over the years do those sort of things pretty well, don't they? The tributes to, ex-employees or ex-players or whatever. And I wasn't aware of the blue plaque. I think that sounds like a fitting tribute. So that's my point on that.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's ultimately it's a family club, and we love it, and community is important, and people that make up the community. It's always sad when somebody that is so familiar, passes out of our lives.
Yeah, there is a just one more thing with it. There is an advertising another podcast actually to do with football. It's nothing to do with Leicester. There is an announcers podcast. Okay, I'll put the link on X. So follow us on X or on Twitter at FFS Pod. And also I put it on Facebook as well at the time. So if you scroll down, you'll be able to find it. But there's an announcers podcast. Okay. I think it's called "And Now Your Teams" or something along those lines. I don't know whether they're still doing it now, but there's a whole host of stadium announcers, and you're talking Manchester United, the Liverpool guy who's done it for about 4 decades. I think the United guy's done it for donkeys as well, but lower down the divisions. And there's Brad. Brad's got an episode on there, so it's about half an hour about announcing at Leicester and how he kind of accidentally fell into the job, as most people do. So yeah, well worth finding out. I'll put the link up again. It's on the Twitter feed. It's on the X feed. If you scroll down 3 or 4 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, not too many. Yeah, it's on there. That's well worth listening to, just from a Leicester City point of view. And of course, he talks about the league winning season, etc., and all that. So yeah, well worth finding out. But that's it for the big show. Make sure, again, you subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you enjoy this, there's plenty of big shows as you go back through the season. Also, there's plenty of previews. There's plenty of the champions 10 years on, and we'll be looking at October and November shortly. And also the FPL show on For Fox's Sake. If you're watching on YouTube, then make sure you do subscribe. If you're not, make sure you subscribe anyway. We've got a big competition coming up, and you need to have subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this, many thanks. There's a back catalogue of about 12 years of this nonsense. But from myself and Sam and Jono, that's it for the big show. And we'll see you next week on the back of hopefully 2 victories for Leicester against West Brom and Wrexham. Let's be greedy.